Today we are going to have a little abstruse, but very informative investigation. Let's try to find out in which century and in which country Arabic numerals and such a science as arithmetic appeared. At first glance, there are no secrets in the history of arithmetic. According to historians, it originated more than 3,000 years ago, and they consider this fact absolutely irrefutable. But today we will not, as usual, take on faith the words of historians, but simply check the facts that they provided. And I think we will find a lot of interesting things. And it may well turn out that the whole history of arithmetic is not 3,000 years old, but much less. And this science was born quite recently, around the beginning of the 18th century. We will also try to find the origins of Arabic numerals, and perhaps their history will not be as ancient as historians assure us. So, let's get started. And we will start, oddly enough, with Wikipedia, which nowadays is the main resource, through which scientists carry their fantasies to the masses. And this is what historians write here. The reason for the emergence of arithmetic was the practical need for counting, the simplest measurements and calculations. The first reliable information about arithmetic knowledge was found in the historical monuments of Babylon and ancient Egypt, dating back to the 3rd millennium BC. A great contribution to the development of arithmetic was made by Greek mathematicians, in particular the Pythagoreans, who tried to determine all the laws of the world with the help of numbers. I just started studying the history of arithmetic, and I immediately had interesting questions. Of course, everything is written reliably. Babylon, ancient Egypt, Pythagoreans. It looks authentic. Only here we will not be able to verify this in any way, because there are no real manuscripts dating back to the period of Babylon and ancient Egypt. There are, of course, some drawings on the stones, but in what century these inscriptions were made, and, most importantly, how exactly they were translated, no one knows. Historians say that arithmetic is more than 4,000 years old, but you will not find any real documents confirming this. The maximum that can be shown to you in the museum is a copy from another unknown copy, which is unknown who removed from the newly made inscriptions on the stone. But we are not going to climb into the millennial wilds yet. Let's consider a period closer in time, that is, the times of ancient Greece. After all, historians are absolutely sure that it was the ancient Greek mathematicians who made a great contribution to the development of arithmetic. And this fact seems to be absolutely accurate. It's not for nothing that we studied the Pythagorean theorem at school. And all school teachers are absolutely sure that this theorem was proved more than 2,000 years ago by Comrade Pythagoras, together with his students. All of this, of course, seems to be true. It is a pity that Pythagoras himself did not leave behind a single manuscript. None at all. Plato and Aristotle told the world about the achievements of Pythagoras and his disciples. These are, of course, serious thinkers of the ancient world, and their words, of course, could be trusted. But of course, we cannot hear what they said about Pythagoras. And we can't read what these Greeks wrote about Pythagoras either, because neither Plato nor Aristotle left behind any original manuscripts. None at all. And the world learned about these great thinkers only in the 16th century from manuscripts written in Arabic script. So nowadays it is impossible to know who and when proved the Pythagorean theorem. There are no documents that Pythagoras really existed. The world doesn't even know what he looked like, because there are no lifetime busts of Pythagoras. And we can only judge about his appearance by the Roman copies of the bust of Pythagoras. And these copies do not even indicate someone's bust, Pythagoras or some other invented thinker of ancient Greece. And all of the above, I have great doubts about the veracity of historians' stories about the antiquity of the origin of arithmetic. And that's the most interesting thing. Historians tell about the history of arithmetic of thousands of years. In other words, people have been honing this teaching for 4,000 years. But for some reason, such fundamental postulates for arithmetic as the definition of a natural number were formulated only in 1889th year. Well, anyway, let's try to believe the historians and agree that arithmetic as a science is more than 4,000 years old. This could be the end of it, but the history of arithmetic has roots not only in the history of mythical ancient Greece, but also in the history of ancient India. And this part is more entertaining. After all, from India to Europe came the well-known, so-called Arabic numerals, which humanity uses today. So, according to historians, the positional number system of 10 digits, including 0, first appeared in India at the beginning of our era. The 595th year is the first record of a number in which 9 digits are used. There was no 0 yet. For the convenience of calculus, the Indian astronomer and mathematician Aryabhata, who lived in the 6th century, proposed to write down the numbers with Sanskrit characters. Aryabhata was a very talented person. In his writings, he not only described mathematical rules, but was also one of the first to suggest that the rotation of the heavens is only apparent and is a consequence of the rotation of the earth around its axis. In the mathematical part of his works, Aryabhata describes the extraction of the square and cubic root in the decimal system, gives formulas for the area of a circle and the volume of a sphere. He also gives an approximate value of pi, and also describes examples of solutions for quadratic equations. No matter how you look at it, Aryabhata is a simple Indian genius who managed to write this most difficult work when he was only 23 years old. Also in his writings, he provides fairly accurate data for the size of the Earth and the Moon. All this, of course, is good and seems to prove the indisputable superiority of the Hindus in inventing the digits of the decimal system known to us. But only no reliable information about this scientist has been preserved, and even his date of birth is unknown. Rather, it seems to be known to historians, and they established it from the treatise of this mathematician. In the 9th stanza, Aryabhata writes, "When 60 times 60 years of flowing water and glass have passed me 23 years since my birth." It seems that you can't argue, the mathematician himself accurately indicated his age in his treatise. That's what's strange. A person who solves quadratic equations quite easily, in the calculations of his age, does not operate with hundreds, convenient decimal notation, but tens. He probably hasn't invented hundreds yet. But these are all trifles compared to the documents that have been preserved after him. According to historians, from the writings written by Aryabhata, the name of only 2 is known. Aryabhasha and Aryabhata cited Kanta. And then, as in a well-known joke, Obama's personal library burned down in the White House. All 3 books. One he never had time to paint. So, of the 2 works of the mathematician Aryabhata, only one has survived. And this seems to be enough to confirm the superiority of the Hindus in the invention of the decimal number system. So it is, but only the original of the 6th century has not been preserved. And the whole world will know about this in the great Indian mathematics only in the 19th century, when the British reinvent Sanskrit. It will be invented. I have a fairly detailed video about this. So, the brilliant work of the Hindu mathematician was written in a language that did not exist in writing until the 19th century. And the world learned about the great works of mathematics from the British only in the 19th century. Before that, no one suspected that India was the birthplace of the world-famous so-called Arabic numerals. This, of course, is a bold statement because historians have other, as they think, strong evidence that Arabic numerals came to us from India. Here is what they write. In the 662nd year, the Christian bishop of Syria, Severus Sebukht, wrote, "I will not touch on the sciences of the Indians, their number system surpasses all descriptions. I just want to say that the account is made with the help of 9 characters. At first glance, this is a weighty proof that in the 7th century, the whole world knew about the magnificent Indian numeral system. That's how it is. But almost nothing is known about Bishop Severus Sebokht himself, and he did not leave behind any original manuscripts. The world also learned about his life from historians of the 19th century. Historians also say that examples of arithmetic and geometric progressions are recorded in the Indian Vedas. This is all good, of course. Only now the Indian Vedas were brought into written form only in the 19th century by the British, and until the 19th century. The Indian Vedas existed only in oral form and were passed from mouth to mouth by dedicated bandits. I wonder how arithmetic and mathematical progressions can be transmitted orally for hundreds of years. At this point, the story of the Indian primacy in creating the figures known to all of us could be finished simply by saying that everything we know about the great Hindu mathematicians we learned from 19th century British scientists, who put Sanskrit, which did not exist until the 19th century, into paper form, at the same time inventing a 1,000-year history of India. But historians have another concrete proof: the superiority of Hindus in the mathematical field. Or rather, not quite reinforced concrete, but birch bark. But this does not change the essence, because everyone knows that birch bark is the most durable material on Earth. And it is absolutely not subject to rot. In 1881 year, an ancient Indian mathematical text written on birch bark was found in the village of Bakshali. According to experts, this is the oldest existing manuscript on Indian mathematics. The manuscript contains the earliest known use of the zero symbol in India. Radiocarbon analysis showed that one part of the manuscript belongs to the 3rd century, the other part by the 9th century. It seems that this is the proof. The collection, consisting of 70 birch bark pages, describes mathematical rules and illustrates each of them. All this, of course, is good, if not for one thing: birch bark. This material has lain in the humid climate of India for 1,500 years, and nothing has happened to it. Therefore, let's go further and study the Arabic trace of Arabic numerals. In the 10th century, the scientific Islamic center was Baghdad, where many Arab scientists worked. It doesn't make any sense to list their names, because they didn't leave any original manuscripts behind. The Arabs had 2 types of numbering: alphabetic and decimal positional. The alphabetic one goes back to the ancient Semitic alphabet. At the beginning of the 9th century, Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi wrote a book about the Indian account. The textbook contained the solution of practical problems and was the first book written using the positional number system. Before that, the numbers were used for calculations on the counting board. In the 12th century, 2 translations of the book into Latin were made by Adelard from England. Everything seems to be fine. In the 12th century, an Englishman translated the manuscripts of the 9th century into Latin. And this means that the Arabs were the first to use the Arabic decimal system. And the 12th century translation seems to prove it. That's right, it's just a translation of an Arabic manuscript. It was lost and became known to the world only in 1857 year, when Al-Khwarizmi's book about the Indian number was published. It is not known exactly from what source this book was copied. In 1427 year, the head of the Samarkand Observatory, Jamshid al-Kashi, described a system of decimal fractions. In the treatise, The Key of Al-Kashi Arithmetic describes the sexagesimal number system. In the same treatise, Al-Kashi introduces decimals, formulates the basic rules and actions with them, and provides ways to translate sexagesimal fractions into decimals and vice versa. So we kind of got to the real Arab mathematicians. This, of course, is not the 10th century, but the 15th, but still Arab scientists wrote a serious mathematical work. And now we seem to be able to give the arithmetic superiority to the Arabs. Well, that's what's weird. The employee of the Samarkand Observatory left behind almost no descriptions. It is only known that he worked at the Ulugbek Observatory and wrote a famous mathematical treatise. Nothing more is known about this man. It's good that at least we know the place of work. Samarkand Observatory. The structure, of course, is notable, and it worked at the beginning of the 15th century. But no one knows what this famous observatory looked like. The scientific community learned about this observatory only in 1908 year, when the archaeologist Vyatkin discovered the incomprehensible ruins. No engravings and other images of the Ulugbek Observatory have been preserved by the 20th century. They decided to finish it like this, and give the proud name of the observatory, although no one can say for sure what kind of ruins they were. So, an employee of a non-existent observatory of the 15th century wrote a mathematical treatise that influenced the development of arithmetic throughout Europe. This is all good, of course, but the employee of the non-existent Al-Kashi Observatory did not leave behind any original manuscripts, and the whole world will know about his work only in 1585 year, from the writings of the Flemish mathematician Simon Steven. And that's what we get. The so-called Arabic Indian numbers in Europe appear as if out of nowhere. Historians write about the ancient mathematicians of India, but the whole world learns about these scientists only in the 19th century, from the books of English scientists. It's the same story with the great Arab mathematicians. They seem to exist, but they didn't leave any original documents behind. And we learn about their work from the works of European scientists of the 16th and 19th centuries. There is a persistent feeling that Arabic numerals were brought into our world by some third force supervising us. She brought it and said, "Use it. The time of the decimal system has come." And it happened in the 16th century. Simon Steven, about whom nothing is known at all, except that he is the author of the 10th book, published in 1585 year in Flemish and French. It was after the publication of this book that the widespread use of decimals and Arabic numerals began in Europe. Historians, however, say that Arabic numerals appeared a little earlier, in the 13th century. But they do not have any clear explanations of where the so-called Arabic numerals came from in Europe. That's it. Watch my channel.